Hey everyone.
Oh.
Hey CJ. It's so glad or I'm so glad to have you here and I think that this is going to be an amazing interview because I put it out on social media that we were going to have this talk and there's so many questions for you.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. We are going to be talking about your book coming out, Maeve Fly from Tor Nightfire. Actually, I have a question. Is this going to be in hardcover?
Yes.
Yes. So it is
Yes.
hardcover. And then somebody asked me if you will be doing signed copies, which I wanted to know about that too.
So as of now, we are gonna have signed book plates that I'm sending to a lot of stores. So I'll be able to like update online and say which stores have them. So they'll
Yeah.
have the signed book plate copies. And then in LA, I'm gonna kind of just go around and hopefully get to sign some in different stores, and I'll post about that too.
When does this book come out? It comes out in July, right?
June 6th,
June.
6623, which is like almost 666.
Ooh, you
You
got
know, like,
real close there. You got real close.
we've all loved that.
So
So,
will you be going to like dark delicacies or for your
um,
name?
yeah, I mean, I hope to go all over. So but
Yeah.
I'll definitely keep people posted. I know we have 2 bookstores so far, one in Oregon and one in North Dakota, who have asked for,
Oh,
signed book plates, so that'll be cool.
yeah, that'll be really cool. Where in Oregon are you going to Pals?
I'm actually not scheduled to go to Oregon right now, but again, I'll keep everybody updated.
Okay, but
We're kind of like finalizing the tour right now.
yeah. I know it's such a crazy thing. This is like my first experience with like doing tour stuff too, and like I just don't know how the whole thing like works on the publicist level. Like it's really kind of a lot to get everybody's schedules lined up, and I'm glad that there's other people besides myself working on it.
Right? It's amazing, and it's crazy, like, it's amazing how much you don't know going into any of these things, and,
Yeah.
I mean, especially, like, you've been in this industry, in your way for a long time, and so it's like, even then, you just don't know till you get there. It's
Yeah.
pretty wild.
Yeah, is this your first book then?
Oh, yeah.
This
Oh,
is
yeah,
your
I'm
debut?
learning.
Yeah, this is
And
your debut. I thought maybe you had because I remember on that panel, that I moderated, it was about, like, why are people drawn to horror? And I remember specifically you saying, like, "I didn't think I was a horror writer until" like, weren't
yeah.
you in class and your teacher was like, "FYI, you are."
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly how it happened.
Yeah.
It it really surprised me, and I had never really read horror before, and, by the way, I'm so excited for your book.
Oh,
Speaking
thanks.
of,
Oh,
uh,
thank you.
but yeah, it's just this beautiful world of, so many different shades, There's horror romance, there's horror sci-fi, there's, like, grief horror. I mean, it's endless, it's amazing.
Yeah, I've been kind of telling people for your book, I mean, there's always like the girl unhinged buzzword that's
For
been
sure.
going on, and that sells. I mean, people love that whole vibe. But I also think it's kind of extreme horror. Would you say it's pretty
Uh,
extreme?
well, I hadn't thought that before, but I'll take it. I mean, I feel like there are so many great extreme horror writers out
Yeah,
there who I would love to be, put beside.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was hard to write and it was gross and it like upset me writing it. So I can understand.
Oh, interesting. Like I think that sometimes readers like okay, first I'll just back up. There's this thing that I do sometimes where when I read a certain part of the book, I will, like, flip over to see if the author's picture is on the back because 'cause I'm like, "Who is this weirdo right now?" Like, where what oh, there she is. Look there. Wow, she really thought of something creepy right there. Um, so I'll do that, and I think, like, readers imagine writers sitting there all diabolically being like, while they're typing this stuff out,
There's
but
some of that too.
yeah, dude.
There's a, um but yeah, I mean, it's mostly like I just am so uh wired to feel fear. Like I've my whole life I've just been afraid of things.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I think it lends itself to coming up with like worst case scenarios. And like it like the I don't want to like spoil, but there's like a, like a household item that is used
Yes.
in a particular way in this
Yes.
book, and I've always thought like that's just the scariest thing.
Oh
And
god. Yeah.
I mean, it just seems terrifying. So, things like that. I mean, I mostly put in what would scare me.
Yeah, I related to you so hard, like, just shout out for that panel that we did, that was at the TBR Con, and that was, I'm pretty sure the title of it was, like, "What Draws You to Horror?"
Yeah.
Um, but I related to you so much when you were talking about how you are a timid person, like, I'm a very timid person too, that's why I read horror, because
Yeah.
everyone else is out there being, like, absolutely bananas with all this shit they do, jumping out of airplanes and being reckless with their bodies, and I'm just like, who are these people? Like, I'll read about Maeve doing like really insane things, but I don't want to be Maeve, if that makes sense.
Totally. Totally. I feel that the one way in which I maybe differ from that, and I wish, and my family wishes this was not the case, but I do love an adrenaline rush.
Oh
So I'm
no.
so I'm a little bit in that camp. But in terms of just like, I mean, I couldn't even watch horror movies till I mean, in the
Yeah,
last like 5 years. It's
yeah,
crazy.
me too.
So but it's such a great space, and I love hearing you talk about it too.
Well, it's funny, my husband and I remember specifically we were watching the Japanese, Ju-on, which is, I think, The Grudge, but we were, like, holding pillows up over our
Oh yeah.
face and I was like, "You get up and turn it off." This is back with VCRs, we didn't have a remote. So I was like, "You get up and turn it off." He's like, "No, you get up." Like, "I can't move this fucking pillow. I don't wanna see this."
Yeah, I don't blame you. And I mean, when I was a kid, I kind of had this feeling like if I closed my eyes, that whatever was on the screen would actually come get me and I wouldn't be able to see it coming. So it was like I
Oh
just had to
my
like watch. I had to watch. I couldn't stop.
That is terrifying too. I mean, and then they think of things like Freddy Krueger who, like, invades your dreams or something, and it's
The
like, there's
scariest premise.
no safe place.
No, you've just heard of him and now like you're toast.
Yeah,
That's that. You're gonna
exactly.
dream about him and you're gonna die.
Yeah, I know. I have this one memory where this friend of mine had a birthday party, it was a sleepover, and she decided that she was gonna do, like, a Freddy Krueger marathon because there was, like, 2 or 3 of the movies out at the time, and I was like, "What the no." So I just asked if I could go read in her bedroom, and she had books and stuff, and I laid on her bed, and she had a Chinese potbelly pig, actually, that I got to, like, snuggle up with, and they told her
Amazing.
brother. I know, it was weird. They told her brother that I was in there and I was too scared to watch movies, and he had been Freddy Krueger for Halloween, and he dressed up like him and scared the shit out of me, and I, like, called my mom and asked if I could come home.
Oh my god. I don't blame you. I
Yeah,
mean, I was gonna say that sounds like a perfect night, just like reading in a friend's room with a potbelly pig. Like, what a
snuggling
dream.
with a pig.
The
I
pig
know.
ruined it.
Yeah, it was ruined, unfortunately, but it's funny, my mom still to this day thinks it's funny that, like, now I'm the mother horror, but, like, my family tells me what movies I can and cannot watch, like, my kids go to see movies I won't watch, so
Love that.
yes, but I really wanna talk about Maeve Fly. I have questions. I'm armed with questions from your fans, and then I have my own questions, so, um,
Great.
this read like a love letter to LA, which I've read books that totally shit on LA and, like, talk about narcissism and, like, the shallow, vapid people of LA, and this was kind of a response, it felt like. Like, did you set out to kind of be that anti-narrative?
So, this is like a tricky, well, it's not tricky, but this is like a funny story. Like, so we had moved here, my boyfriend and me and our many dogs, from New York,
Yeah.
um, in 2019. And when we got here, it was my idea to move, by the way.
Yeah.
And when we got here, I was like, I made the biggest mistake of my entire life.
Oh, no.
I miss New York. I miss New Yorkers. Like
Yeah.
I couldn't understand the city and the way it was laid out. Like everything just freaked me out.
Yeah.
And so I kind of set out to, like, when I was writing Maeve, I kind of expressed a lot of my feelings in other characters in the book.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Through the process, though, of like researching the city and getting to know the city, mostly from actually our car because it was a pandemic suddenly.
Yeah.
Um, I kind of fell in love, and now I got to say I can't imagine living anywhere else.
Aw.
And it was it. I do have this thing where I feel like if we look at anything for long enough, like you just can't help but fall in love with it. And I think
Yeah.
like that was a really beautiful thing about this book. And now I'll defend LA to anyone. But I mean, what you're talking about totally exists. And I think that
Yeah.
I wrote characters who were you know, somewhat selfish. And
Yeah.
I think that there's room for that, you know.
Well, I love the fact that, like, there's this duo, this, like, friendship between these 2 women who are princesses at at a very identifiable theme park. Um, but what gave you that idea? Like, did you go and see princesses and think, "That needs to be in a book"?
Yeah, 100%. So,
Oh, yeah.
I went to said theme park, and, I went with my visiting goddaughter and her parents,
Yeah,
and, she was a toddler. And I had never been as an adult to, uh, any part of this theme park,
right.
and so we didn't know that there are, like, tickets to 2 parks. So we got tickets to the wrong park. So I was like, "Where's the
Oh,
castle? Where's the haunted mansion? You know, where's all this stuff that I'm looking for?" And, instead, it was like all these rides that we couldn't ride, and then these 2 princesses. And
yeah.
so my goddaughter, like, we were like, "Well, this is what we have to do." And it was like, you know, many hours of waiting in line
Ugh,
and
yeah,
certain songs playing again and again while you're in
yeah. Oh
line.
my
Like,
god. Ugh.
and we went in and we met these princesses, and it just, you know, these lovely 20-year-old girls. And, I don't know, in that exact moment, I was like, "This is something."
I love it because Maeve and her friend are not lovely 20-year-old girls.
Well, yeah, and that's more fun for me to live in
Yeah,
and write, but I don't know, I think the park is great, I think people who love the park are great, and,
yeah,
again, like, in the process of writing this, I just learned about it all a lot more, and I will say I do love the one particular movie, the one particular cartoon and
yeah,
characters that Maeve, interacts with a lot,
yeah,
so,
I do too, I do too.
I think it's
I
great.
I actually it's funny because my business partner loves that park and goes and returns there frequently. I've been one time, I think. There might have been another time where I kind of pooped out. I can't remember if I did go on that trip or not, but my husband's family goes a lot too. And I don't know, it's just their slogan of being, like, the happiest place on earth is, like, "Are we sure?" Because it's very expensive, and I'm, like, a germphobe, and it feels very
Oh,
germy. I also have, like, a fear of crowds. It's very crowded. I don't like waiting in line. I don't like eavesdropping on other people's well, I mean, I kind of like eavesdropping on other people's conversations, but, like, it's also just kind of too much information, when you're surrounded by a bunch of different people. I don't know. It's a
yeah,
lot.
it just is one of those places where it totally is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of a fantasy world, and I love the idea of people sort of, like, willingly I mean, I think it's like watching, you know, like a horror movie. It's like you go in or reading a horror novel or anything, like, you're willing to suspend all disbelief and really live in this other world, and I think, like, that is magical, you
It is
know?
kind of magical, you're
It
right.
even with its grit and other side, and I think even looking at those things are kind of in for me at least, kind of made it more magical because it's like, it's fun to realize we're collectively agreeing to this and that we all wanna live in this space, you know? I
Yeah.
mean, it's kinda cool.
Yeah, and that there's this whole, like, front part, this forward facing
Yes.
part of it But on the backside, like this book, you know, these characters who dress up as these wholesome pillars and beacons of light and fantasy are kind of doing other things
Well, they're
right
people.
before.
Yeah, like I mean, I'm sure a lot of them are just really wholesome and wonderful. Yeah, I
Sure.
don't know, maybe all of them, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I love the idea of a facade, and I love the idea of, humans love play. We
Yeah.
can't help it.
Yeah. Well, here's a question. When Maeve is like sitting in her room doing activities that give her peace, was there some part of you in the part where like she's listening to music and is there some part of you in there, or is she completely a fictionalized character?
Oh, there's probably more of me and Maeve than I want to even
Uh,
really admit to my face.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, 100%. Like I love music, and I love finding like the weirdest, most obscure thing I can, and then
yeah,
like learning everything about it.
yeah,
And I love old movies, and I love you know, quiet time in my space where I can just sort of exist in whatever world I want to.
yeah,
The uh Watching predator videos, actually, a very very close person in my life, one of the I mean, just the person I love uh so much, used to watch predator videos, and I thought, like pretty routinely, mostly sharks. And I thought that was so interesting, and that really kind of stuck with me. So I love the idea of like, because it is this, like, like that's a part of life that we live with, and it's we are kind of predators and we are kind of prey as humans, depending on
yeah,
the scenario. And I
yeah.
love the idea of like really kind of looking at that.
Well, I am attracted to those kinds of things too. Like I am terrified of spiders and I'm terrified of sharks, but like Shark Week comes on and that's all I
Oh
want
yeah.
to watch,
Oh
right?
yeah, it's so much fun, and it's like, how can we not want to? And I mean, especially like, I think, I'm not the only person on the planet who loves wolves. In fact, it's like the most like cliche favorite animal, and I feel like, but because like they're so, like, we've interacted so closely with
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
forever,
Yeah.
and
Those
we've
t-shirts with like the howling wolf on
oh,
it.
for sure. I have like five.
Yeah. I mean, they're really cool animals, you know, and despite the fact that they could kill you, they seem like dogs, so
Yeah, exactly, and they're pack animals, but also, they do sometimes go off on their own, and that's its own complicated dynamic, and I mean, it's how can you not relate to that?
exactly. I also there's so much like music and literature and like movies in here, especially like, you know, people have been comparing this book to American Psycho, like the female version of American Psycho. Like, was that intended on your part? Were you sort of like, I want to flip the script on this like male version of going off the rails and make it feminine?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the one thing that's been interesting in this process is that a lot of people, I think, have kind of gotten the impression that maybe I have been saying that, like something like American Psycho, I'm making a critique of it. But actually, I feel like I set out to celebrate something,
Yeah,
and
I
the
think you
only
did.
critique, yeah, thank you. And the only critique I was trying to make is that I think it is a shame that, what I've seen is that, uh, one way feminism comes out, um, is like we kind of will push aside a lot of like male literature that gives, whatever kinds of vibes. But I think, why can't we just look at what is amazing in that literature and what really struck us when it came out and what still works so well? And why can't women just exist in that space too? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think we should discard these things. I think we should celebrate them. And frankly, I just wanted to live in that world, and that's what I needed at the time. And I love Patrick Bateman, and I thought, like, how can I create a character that I could see myself in, and that would help, that would put me in that space, and it was just really
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, I love that too because I think that it's kind of speaks to our real life as women who are messy.
Yeah.
And why do guys get to be messy? And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, they're just having this like midlife crisis, or let's just give them a pass because of this reason or that reason. But a woman is messy, and it's somehow like, this is why they can't be in leadership. They're so emotional and erratic and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what? Like our whole government is basically run by men or a large percentage of it, and we're pretty fucked. So it sounds like a good problem.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just fun. It's fun to live in a world where, like, I mean, I say it like 100 ways in the book, but I really do believe that, we can have a character who just gets to have fun being a monster and doesn't have to have a sad reason that she is one. Although, I mean, she's a very lonely character and has
Right.
made a very lonely life for herself. So there is that.
I mean, it speaks too to just like characters not always having to be like relatable or likable. Like I hate that. Like why do I want to read books where it's everybody's relatable and likable? Like no one in this planet is that relatable or likable.
Yeah, fair enough.
You
Fair
know?
enough. And I mean, I think the one way in which, like, I really strongly relate to Maeve, other than, some of the surface things, is like I tried to create a really loyal character, and
Yeah.
she's so fucked, and she's so misguided, and she's so clueless and selfish and all these things, but she is very loyal to the people that she loves.
That's
And,
true.
and that was like the one way in which I really just was like, she's at least got that.
Well, do you think that she's like a villain, a sympathetic villain, an empathetic villain, or just like a villain villain?
I think it depends on the reader. I
Yeah.
think, it's been funny, like, there is so much reaction so far. By the way, I just still am getting my head around having reaction and having readers, like, it's been a trip. Um,
It's
but I've
crazy.
gotten it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Uh, some people are like, "These are the most unrelatable characters of all time," and, either they have fun with the book despite that, or with that, or they don't. Some people, though, have been like, "I feel seen by this
Mhm.
character," and, like, that's a pretty cool thing, and
Yeah.
I really hoped for that I could create, a character that is maybe all the parts of ourselves that we don't really wanna look at, or a certain type of person, or, you know, and I have to say this was an easier character for me to write than any other character I've ever written, so clearly there's something, already in
That's
me.
well, that's why I wondered if maybe this was your horror debut or if this is just like a debut. Like you say that you've written other things. Like, are there
Yeah.
more things for people to read, or is that like classwork you're talking about?
So I wrote Maeve is the 3rd book I ever wrote.
Okay.
And then, yeah, lots of stories and things.
Yeah.
Actually, I believe, we'll see, it's not like totally confirmed, but I believe the first book I ever wrote might be my next book coming out.
Oh,
So that will be fun. But yeah, I mean, Maeve is very different from what I thought I would be writing. So
yeah.
but nothing's out in the world, nothing. This is the one thing you'll find.
Well, so that's when you say that it's something that you didn't think that you would be writing. I feel like that is really cool because as an artist, like I feel like authors are artists. You know, you guys are creating something out of nothing. Like this is a whole story about fictional people that don't exist. So it's something out of nothing. And I feel like potters and artists and other kinds of mediums get to say, "Oh, here's this vase that I sent out or set out to make, and it's not exactly what I had envisioned, but here it is and people purchase it." In the same way, I feel like authors can go, I set out to do this thing and it was a totally different experience than I expected. And then they just get to move on to the next creation. Like, do
Yeah.
you, from your experience with Mayfly, do you think you're going to set out to make a horror novel again? Or do you think that it's just going to be whatever?
So they've all been horror novels. But what I am really drawn to is like supernatural horror and a lot of grief horror. And obviously, I mean, the romance storylines are going to be in every book I put out,
Yay.
because I
Yay.
love romance and
Me
I can't
too.
help it.
Me too.
Great. Well, I'm so glad. And
Yeah.
I think like I'm such a big Anne Rice fan, and like we haven't had. I don't see so much, horror romance out there. I see some, and I always love it. So I definitely want to do that. But I never thought I would have done a slasher. I got to like, even like slasher movies, like have been so hard for me to watch. It was fun reading Stephen Graham Jones, Lake Witch books, because I was like, it kind of helped give me an education, and I would go watch the movies,
Yeah.
after he referenced them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was the slasher component that I definitely did not think, I didn't think I would ever go there, but here we are.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I went through this whole phase of reading extreme horror for like 2 years almost, where it was like, that's all I really wanted. I wanted it sick. I wanted it messed up. I wanted people to be like filleted. I wanted like heads coming off. Like I was the bloodier the better. I went through this like whole thing. And then I think like kind of like an album when you just kind of play it over and over again because you love it. Now
Oh
you
yeah.
are kind of like, get out of my head. And so that's it. I read Maeve Fly on the tail end of that, where I was just like, some of the scenes of like gore and graphic were like, oh my gosh, this is so triggering. Like, why did I love this? But I also do have so much respect for those scenes in this book because they have purpose and reason. Like, it's not just here's some cardboard cutouts, let's make it super violent and gross and just chop it all up. It like had this whole thrust of a storyline behind it, which made it so much more engaging to me.
I'm so glad. And
Yeah.
I mean, really, like I was day drinking to write all those scenes. So like I'm with you. I mean, it really like,
Gosh, yeah.
and just thinking, I have a cousin who is an ER surgeon. She's amazing. And
Yeah.
so I text her all the time, and I'm like, okay, well, like what's the human jaw, if you
Oh
were
no.
to take, whatever. And she's just like, oh, no problem. And here are some diagrams,
Oh,
I
that's
mean,
awesome. What a great resource.
oh yeah. Doctors are amazing. By the side note,
Yeah.
anytime I meet a doctor at a party, I'm always like, what is the grossest thing you've ever seen? And they love to tell. And I just think they're the greatest people.
Yeah, I have a brother-in-law who's an EMT, and I mean, my mother-in-law always tries to shut the conversations down at like dinner time, but like I'm not one of those people who gets grossed out at dinner. I could be like shoveling in like beans
Love
and hot
that.
dogs. Yeah.
Love that. My people.
He told us this story one time about this kid who was jumping for whatever reason, was jumping up and down on his bed, and he didn't have clothes on, and he like landed on a tack, okay, and it went into the tender vittles and was in there, and like the EMT had to like help him deal with that situation. And I was like fascinated. I was like,
Good. Oh my
were
God.
you just so like, how did you just get to work? How did you not ask him like, why did you do this?
Yeah. Their doctors are amazing. I mean, they're just
Yeah.
like, they just have this thing in front of them, and they're like, okay, how do I fix it? And
Yeah.
I love that. And if I saw half the things that, like an EMT sees, I might just throw up on the floor.
Yeah.
So hats off to them. They're amazing.
I mean, can you imagine all the calls, all the things people do secretly in their homes that we don't
No.
want to know about?
Well,
No.
I'll try to imagine, for more books. But yeah, I mean, completely. It's thank goodness for people like that existing.
Yes, and also that you have that resource and don't have to like spoil your Google search engine with like looking up that.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm for sure on, if there are watch lists for such things, I'm
Right.
there.
I've always wondered about that because it's like they always tell in stories, oh, we like here's all the things that they were Google searching. I've heard it in like true crime podcasts too. And I'm like, well, were they a writer? Because
I know.
you
I
guys have to
know.
look at some sick shit.
I just gotta hope hope I never get framed or anything.
Yeah. Also, I need an EMT story from you.
On it. Done.
Good. I saved a good question for last because it does need to go last. You have a fan who is a friend of mine, and she was up in my DMs being like, here's all these questions that I want you to ask, but you
Aw.
can't because, they're too spoilery. But I could reframe the last one she asked, which was, do you think that there are more Maeve tales to come, or do you think this was it for Maeve? This is all we get.
So, my manager and agent, when I first sent Maeve out, they were like, people are probably going to ask you for sequels. Do you have sequels in you? Like, do you have some ideas for sequels? Even sometimes like, here are some ideas for sequels.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, no, no. And I kept saying no to everything. And I was like totally firm.
Yeah.
And one day I was in the car and I was like talking to my boyfriend about it. And I said, well, I mean, like, what would I even do anyway? Like, there is no Maeve sequel. There's nothing. And then as I was starting to go through this out loud, I was like, well, I mean, I guess I could do this. And I guess it could do this. And then I had an outline about a day later. So, I, haven't talked to the powers that be, but
Right.
I've got things cooking.
That is so exciting. I think she's gonna be real. She was like, "This can't be the end of May," and May, like, "There's got to be more Maeve stories," and I totally agreed. There was like actually one scene in the very beginning. You probably haven't, but have you ever seen a weird little indie movie called this? I think it's called The Secret Life of Jimmy Reardon or something.
No, I haven't seen it.
It's so bizarre. Her whole bedroom scene in the very beginning felt very familiar to me, and it was because it was a scandalous movie that I watched when I was younger and thought my mom would kill me if she knew I was watching this movie. It was basically just this guy who was like sleeping with this girl, and they were just like, it was while the parents were home, and like she would watch all this horrible stuff on her it was before computers, so she would watch horrible stuff on TV, and this felt scandalous like that, where like if you were reading it on an airplane, I would kind of do that thing where you're just kind of like edging out the people.
I love that. Those are like all the best parts. That's me with romance novels. I'm always like, on the good scenes.
I love that you put romance in here too, because I was going to tell you when you said that. Have you read any of Isabel Khanna's work?
No, but I'm going to immediately go order.
Yeah, you need to get the Hacienda, like that. That was from last year, and that has great romance in it. And then her new book, The Vampires of El Norte, is very romantic.
And I love I mean, who doesn't love vampires? Thank you. That's the best ever. I'm so excited.
Yeah, definitely hit the pre-order on that, because it is centered around a romance, but then there's vampires. So it's like, what else do you want out of life?
Beautiful. Yeah. Nothing, actually. Nothing.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me for this interview. Like, your publicist asked me if I was reviewing this book, and I was like, I already fucking reviewed it. I got a net galley.
It was a great review. Thank you. That was a lot of fun.
Yo, thank you. Yeah, I had a net galley and everything, and I was like, crazy enough though, like a Tor Nightfire never sent me a physical copy, so I was like, overnight me.
Oh man, well, I'm so glad you got one. You had to have it.
Me too, because then I got to flashy bush. It's got that eyeball on it. So cool.
We love eyeballs.
But yeah, she asked me, would you be interested in doing an interview? And I was like, hell yeah, I had so much fun doing that panel earlier. Like, CJ's cool. I want to talk to her again. So
thank you. Well, it's so much fun seeing you again, and thank you for doing this.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure. That's pretty much it for this interview, but I hope that we get to like bump into each other at a con or something this year.
Thank you. I hope so too. I think we've got at least one on the books so far. So
okay, yeah, and I'll stay tuned for your tour dates too, because if we're going to be in the same area, I know I'm going to be in LA at the end of August. So
amazing. Yeah, we got to get a drink.
We do. All right, thank you, CJ.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Stay.